What are the different elements that you're competing on if it is not the tech capacity?
This is the first strategy game that is available on mobile devices that has Web3 component, right?
What is the Web3 game?
The Web3 game is the hype game. It's the attention game. It's the being trending, like having narratives, keeping those narratives, making sure that there's always like something, to look forward to.
You all of a sudden open up two markets for volume. The first one being the utility of the actual NFTs, but then there's the speculative market on the back end.
I think there are really two types of users, right? And it's not something we're innovating on. When you think about Counter-Strike, right? There are people that play the speculative trading on the skins.
From a marketing perspective, there's two ways to have a winning game if you want. You have the ability to acquire customers for cheap, or you have the ability to retain customers for a long time, therefore increasing the average LTV of that customer.
People play free-to-play games because they have an Apple iPhone or Google Play phone in their pockets. And actually my KPIs are not as good because the quality of the user that I got is not what I needed. And so that's the reason why today, despite mobile gaming being the biggest revenue, when Web3 people do not whine or complain, that means you've done a great job.
But hey, listen, Jeremy, my dude, first of all, it's great to see you. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Since we last spoke, you announced raising $80 million for Xterio, backed by brands like Animoca, KuCoins, and Maker Funds. And on your side, Jeremy, needless to say, you've had incredible success with the launch of Overworld. And you yourself, as a founder, I often bring you up in the different case studies and videos that I make. You have an incredible track record and have been part of making of top games, growing over $2 billion in revenue in total.
Yeah.
You're about to launch the XTER token, and it's launching as a layer 2 on the Ethereum network. The first question I have for you is, what was the logic behind going with that specific route of creating an L2 and even dropping the token?
Yeah, it's really around, I'm going to talk about like what I've seen in this space and what motivated us to create the chain. I think over the past 2 years, we've seen the technical moat of chains really decline, right? In the sense that there's no technical challenge in building your own chain. 2 years ago, it would have been very, very complex with, new protocols like OP or ZK. To be honest, if you're a good engineering team, you can spin your own chain with the right partner. In our case, we're working with Optimism and Outlier in 5 to 6 weeks, right? And so our motivation was not around like, hey, we want to enter the chain wars, right? And in our mind, we're not competing with a Ronin, a Arbitrum, or a Polygon, or a Mutable. Our motivator was saying, the tech does not matter. It is highly replicable. Why don't we replicate it? But that is going to be the foundation for what is our true expertise, which is building and scaling games, right? And so having a fully encompassing tech stack across marketplace, launchpad, token bridging, asset transaction, fiat onboarding and offboarding, plus the chain means we're literally at parity, if not better. I think we are better in a couple of ways with all of those contenders I mentioned, right? But once again, that is not our key proposition. Our proposition is work with Xterio because we are actually expert at building games and, more importantly, distributing and scaling them. I love a lot of teams as the chains I mentioned, but a lot of those groups have never worked in gaming, right? They're Web3 native, and that allowed them to have a great head start on the tech. But there came a point, and you can see it now, none of those games have meaningfully scaled outside of the speculative aspect of Web3, or almost none of them, right? Our expertise is, one, we focus our attention not on kind of like, hey, come build on our chain, here's $1 million, stay with us for like 6 months to a year. We don't do those deals. The deals we do is, hey, Leon, you're a fantastic builder and you've got this incredible game concept and you're a proven game maker. Here's 15 million for you to build a game, and we're going to give you all of the publisher skills and resources you need in terms of, we've got an HR team, we've got an accounting team, we've got a finance team, we've got a fundraising team, we've got a BD team. And all of those services you can use them because you're part of our group, and we're going to let you build your team. All you have to do is build a kick-ass game, and then we're going to take that game and distribute it on Apple App Store, Google Play Store. And a perfect example is I come 12 years of relationship with those platforms. We had a problem, our Apple version had like an issue yesterday. I just sent an email to our account manager, and it's the same I've been working with for 6 years. Okay. And I just say, hey man, there's been like the build was stuck in this phase. Can you check what's happening? 1 hour later, hey, let me check. Okay, we moved it to the next phase. Thank you. A lot of those teams, they don't have those relationships. Mm-hmm. They don't even know how to submit a build to Apple. They don't even know the process, the regulations. We know that. And then we know about user acquisition and marketing. And user acquisition and marketing, that is a totally different skill set. Like it requires expert marketers, expert buyers of ads. Where do you place them? What is the cost per install? What is the return on ad spend? And so that is the Xterio magic in my mind. The tech, honestly, it's not that hard anymore. Like it's similar to the early days of building a game engine, right? Like everybody was building the game engine. Terrible waste of time for most developers, right? The reality is like today, you're just going to build on Unreal or Unity, and it's very, very easy to like replicate features that others have created. So that's why I wanted to create the chain. And the chain has been extremely successful. Like we mentioned, number 4th in transaction per day since, I believe, first day of last week, at least for a couple of days, I don't know today, but number 4th of all chains. So right below Solana, I believe. Solana is 3rd.
Was that in volume or in transaction numbers?
In the amount of transactions.
A number, okay.
So amount of unique transactions. And that came from the Paleo game that we launched last week. And of course, a lot of those transactions are either like bots or people trying to farm points. But we're very comfortable with that. Over 3.5, has to be more now, 3.5 million users or unique wallets connected, and over 3 million something transactions per day.
It's fascinating.
But we're very happy that it's bots, because what we wanted to prove is we can scale that chain.
Yes.
Nobody complained about gas fees. Nobody complained about transaction speed, which that is the best compliment in Web3. When Web3 people do not whine or complain, that means you've done a great job, right? Nobody was like, it takes forever to make this thing happen and it costs me like so much ETH, yada, yada. And so we showed, hey, join our ecosystem. Our chain can do over like 277 transactions per second, which puts it in like, I think like the top 3, top 5 of chains in terms of like tech stack. And we're the number 1 L2 in transaction right now. So better than all of the others. We're using that as like a showcase of we have the best tech. We're going to keep on upgrading the tech and we're building it with Outlayer, but that is going to allow us to really scale Web3 to the next dimension, right? So yeah, really, really happy with those results. But once again, those results are just, the tech part is almost boring, right? It's as if you were talking about AWS, saying, AWS, you can do that many like API calls per second. I'm like, yeah, it's great. But our business is gaming and products. That's our business.
Absolutely. On that point, Jeremy, is there a specific reason why you ended up going with creating an L2 versus creating your own standalone chain?
Yeah, listen, L1s just simply do not have the liquidity of ETH, right? It's just as simple as that. Trying to create your new L1 is, from a tech perspective, it's extremely complex. You're gonna have massive liquidity problem. And you see it in some of the L1s that, came in the past, 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, they may have the best tech. I think of some L1s that have like insane TPS capacities. If there's no liquidity, there's no liquidity. I mean, it's kind of like a moot point, right? You can have just the fastest tech or car in the world, but if nobody buys it, the value is null, right? And so we wanted to build something where, and that's why we're experts around distribution. We go to where people are. We don't have the fallacy, the fantasy of like, we're gonna build this product and they will come to us. I'm like, I come from free-to-play mobile. People played free-to-play games because they have a an Apple iPhone or Google Play phone in their pockets. Not because, yeah, we've got this, it's the best game in the world, but you not need to go on your browser and, jump through 5 hoops and then you can play it. That doesn't work, no matter how good the game is.
So go where the crowd is hungry.
Yeah, where people are, right? It's like it's a party. Go to the bar that's full. No matter how fun you are, Leon. If you go to an empty bar, you're gonna be, you're gonna be alone. Just that's the way it is.
That's interesting. From a tech perspective, and I'm sure a lot of the founders that are listening to this, the very builder-centric audience that I have, a lot of them have considered building a chain as part of the long-term strategy. How easy is it to upgrade the chain as the market progresses, as technology advances? Is it as easy as just running a software update, or do you have to rebuild it from the ground up?
No, that's what I'm saying is that we're in a much better place than most incumbents as chains. It's because now there are protocols that are highly upgradable, right? If you run on an older chain, there's a lot of historical baggage. The tech was very immature. And so it takes a lot of work to change basic things. Now that the tech has matured a lot more, and once again, we're not building this chain alone. We're partnering with Outlayer, partnering with Eigenlayer, who's like the creator of restaking protocols, and OP. It's very, very simple, right? And that's why I'm often saying, hey, I'm so bearish on chains. It's like, is Polygon, do they have like a tech advantage over us? Not really. And another chain will come that will probably be better than Xterio, and then we'll upgrade. But none of those things really matter in the grand scheme of things anymore. I don't think there's any sort of moat advantage, first position, or unfair advantage via tech stack. I think now and finally in the content wars, which that is my favorite part of the job.
That's an interesting point you bring up, Jeremy, and I can't but think of the automotive industry. The technology itself gets commoditized at some point.
Exactly.
Every car is safe. Every car gets you from point A to point B. Every car is comfortable. In your context with XTER, I know XTER is part of Xterio, a bigger ecosystem. What are the different elements that you're competing on if it is not the tech capacity?
Yeah, it's really going to be around products, right? And showcasing we can scale those products. And today is actually the perfect day for this interview. We launched our strategy game, Age of Dino, on mobile, Google Play today, Apple App Store Monday. The game is built by people that led State of Survival, a 1.5 billion a year Forex game, The Walking Dead Forex, King of Avalon, just super proven experts at a genre. And to my knowledge, but I'm pretty sure, this is the first strategy game that is available on mobile devices that has Web3 component, right? And the game passed both platform checks, but it's the first case. I only think there's only one other game that I think does it as well as us, and I'll give them credit, it's NFL Rivals. You can play the game, you don't even have to know that there's any Web3 element. So we're going to first prioritize, this is the next generation Forex game, a genre that we're expert at. We're starting to do user acquisition, as of today to get DAU, daily active users, in the game, making sure we've got fantastic KPIs. We had the game in soft launch for almost 6 months, making sure that retention was great, monetization was solid before we launched it. But the magic of Xterio is really around, all you have to do in the game is tap one button and we call it, trade. So just say, hey, you can go and trade your assets. We don't say NFT, we just say you can trade your army, your mercenaries, your dinos, your resources, and you also get a free reward by connecting to the Xterio account. One click. If you do not have a MetaMask, it's an option, but you can just connect with your Apple account or your Google Play account. We create the Xterio wallet for you. There's nothing to do, right?
Correct.
In that wallet, you're gonna have the reward we mentioned. And then you see all of the assets you have. And you can sort them and say, hey, this dino, that's now level 17 I upgraded. I wanna trade it on the marketplace. Super easy. You can use your credit card, you can use USD, you can use euros, you can use pretty much every currency under the sun. You can use ETH, you can use XTER, you can use almost any token because we are working with layer 0 to bridge. So You don't even have to have the exact token. You can trade with BNB for an ETH asset or an Xterio asset. So all of that is like totally seamless. And we're really focused on that aspect of Web3 to show, we need to move away from just like speculative. And I think we've been good at the job of like hyping products, but we need to move to a place where Xterio can showcase what I think is the most important KPI. It's just millions of users, real users, not the, this Web3 games has 1 million users. I'm like, come on, Palio has 3 million users. Sure. I'll be honest, and say, well, a lot of those are just like repeat wallets and bots.
Correct.
But on Apple, if I tell you it's one person, it's one person. Like there's, the degree of uncertainty is like maybe 2%, right? So our goal is saying, hey, we've got 300K, 400K monthly active users playing this Web3 game on mobile. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
In the context of Age of Dino, for example, and your future games under Xterio, are these going to be gated gardens where you can only buy the assets within the app? Or for instance, can I, as a Web3 savvy, go find the smart contract and buy the assets in the backend?
No, that's a great question. And no, the Xterio chain and the Xterio assets are permissionless. So we're in talks with the large, NFT marketplaces, and those assets are going to be tradable on all of those marketplaces. I understand the logic about permissioned environment, but it just reduces your ability to scale and market. So no, you'll be able to trade all of those assets anywhere. In my mind, it's a little more convenient to do it on the external marketplace, and just it's because of what I said about like token bridging and credit card payment. But if you want to buy it, let's say on Magic Eden, you type Age of Dino, and then there's the different collection, dinos, mercenaries, resources, and you can just buy it there.
Which is interesting because you get the ability, you all of a sudden open up two markets for volume. The first one being the utility of the actual NFTs, but then there's the speculative market on the back end. Would you imagine, and this is us maybe thinking a bit further, but would you imagine that the speculative market would create inflation for the users that are there to play Age of Dino because they enjoy the game?
I think there are really two types of users, right? And it's not something we're innovating on. When you think about Counter-Strike, right? There are people that play the speculative trading on the skins, right? And they buy them because they're extremely rare and they try to resell them, but they don't play the game that much. Most people play the game, right? The reality of any good Web3 game in my mind is like 95% of the assets should be a mere couple of bucks, right? Just very cheap, right? And I know in Web3 there's this like, generational wealth fantasy. But for most people, and I include myself in that, if I could make, I play a lot of mobile games. I love RPGs on my phone. But if you told me, hey, you can trade this asset that you want because you participated in this event for like $3-5, I'd be like, a free coffee on a game I love? Yeah. And what that does, it gets the player to play longer. And keeping people entertained and retained is the hardest thing because you're competing not just with other games, but Netflix, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, everything you can think under the sun. So if you can optimize retention, like that's the big win. But then, yes, of course, there's always the case of like, well, the 5% assets remaining are the, extremely, extremely rare. Like I was number one on the leaderboard of that event, and there was this like golden skin that gives you even more power to one of your dinosaurs or mercenaries, right? And that will be traded at a higher premium. So there's always going to be some degree of arbitrage, but I think games, and it's something that people will need to get more comfortable with in Web3, there's always going to be layers of value, right? It's like, well, the Genesis elements, because it's so small, of course, there's going to be like high prices on them if there's actual utility. But in game, most of the assets should be worth, just a couple of bucks.
Correct.
Because you're not going to retain, regular Joe if you have assets that are priced in like hundreds. I mean, the economy is pretty brutal right now. People would be just happy to make $5 every couple of days by playing their favorite game. Yeah. They don't need to make $5,000, right? It's different people.
Yeah. In Web3, our brains are fried, man, in this industry.
It's sad, right? When you see people winning and they're like, I feel like I'm not winning enough. I'm like, dude, you bought this asset at $200, you sold it for $5,000, and they're like, yeah, but I missed on all these opportunities. I'm like, dude, Just celebrate the win, like, be happy. Yeah.
I'm glad you bring up the idea of increased retention. Just yesterday, I was speaking with, I was having a similar conversation with Jiho's co-founder of Axie Infinity and Ronan. And he was mentioning something really interesting, and that was a perspective shift for me. He was saying how everyone is pointing fingers at play to earn, how it is not sustainable and it is not a profitable model, where we have not yet found that model to be sustainable. And he looks at me and he tells me, but does it have to be sustainable on the front end? What if you were able to use play to earn as a user acquisition method that could potentially run unprofitable on the front end, but the real business growth, the real revenue comes from the back end? It comes from the increased retention that you get, the longer lifetime value that you get per customer. And hearing that made me realize that, okay, here's how NFTs actually fit within a broader business model, which is Web3 gaming. So on that point, Jeremy, for you, top of mind, what would the NFTs, what does the business model look like for you, whether it's in games or just in the broader context of user engagement?
He's absolutely right. It's not that revolutionary. I think it's in Web3 people have so little experience in user acquisition that they're like, oh, wow, you can use that. I'm like, oh, yeah. It's the same as having an ad that says, download this game and get 5,000 gems. Right? And they don't have like a financial value in the real world, but they've got a financial value in the game where it would be worth $10, for example. And so when you think about it, the developer is giving close to $10 of value to the consumer, who will not need to buy those gems for a long time. But the hope is that you have what I said, return on ad spend. It's like I spent $50 to acquire this user. I need to make $50 in, it depends on the genre, in 180 days, 460 days. And now it takes it takes a very long time to recoup. But the idea is like, okay, 2 years down the road, what was the LTV of that user, right? I bought that user for $50. You hope that you're now at $75, $100. So you're absolutely right. Part of the value of Web3 is using real world rewards to get people to download your game, right? And
interesting.
You need to make sure that, and that's very hard. I think that's the hardest part in this whole thing is like, you need to make sure that, okay, I gave that person $5, $10 just to download the game, right? You need to make sure that that person is going to stay a long time and that 2 years down the road, a year down the road, you're profitable on that person, right? And that is much harder because the moment there's a real world value, people are going to be financially incentivized. They don't care if it's, like a match 3 game or an RPG or a shooter. They're like, this is $5. But the chances of them staying is very small. So it's very, very hard to tune it. We have more expertise doing it because that's the business we've been. At least with, non-real world currencies, okay, that person loves RPG, downloaded it. Like, you're not going to care about free gems if you're not an RPG fan or a shooter fan. It's because it's like your favorite genre and there's this bonus. Here I'm going to play it. And here you're like, I don't give 2 cents about match 3 games, but I do want the $5. And once they get the $5, I imagine the majority leaves. So you need to make sure that the minority that stays is profitable for the whole group 1 year or 2 years down the line. It's very, very challenging. Very challenging.
This is fascinating, and you're gonna love us diving deeper. I know you're a performance marketer, Jeremy. So here's the way I see it, and I might be oversimplifying it. From a marketing perspective, there's 2 ways to have a winning game if you want. You have the ability to acquire customers for cheap, or you have the ability to retain customers for a long time, therefore increasing the average LTV of that customer. And in the marketplace, whoever you can acquire a customer for cheaper or can retain a customer for much longer has a competitive advantage. Would you say that with NFTs, all of a sudden, you have the ability to make the incentive more attractive, therefore reducing your cost of acquisition? And the gamified element of NFTs in your ecosystem lengthens the lifetime journey of a buyer, therefore increasing the 2 sides of the equation, making your game pretty much hard to compete against non-Web3 native, non-Web3 games.
You hit the nail on the head. The question everybody asks me is like, why did you get in Web3? And I always say like, it was not the degen speculative aspect. Like, I'm not you should see my portfolio of investment. It's the most boring portfolio you can think of. It's like, I'm an old guy just preparing for retirement. I got into Web3 because the last 2 years of my life in free to play, and I've been in free to play for 12. So the last two, that's when Apple and Google really tightened the screws on privacy. You know, we were able to like target you at a super granular level. And suddenly our visibility on user acquisition was, cut down to, to the knees, making the whole business extremely hard because our CPI cost went up because we were able to say, oh, Leon, I know the guy perfectly. Now I'm like, well, I don't know anybody, so I'm just spending more. And actually my KPIs are not as good because the quality of the user that I got is not what I needed. And so that's the reason why today, despite mobile gaming being the biggest revenue, it's just very hard to scale. And you can see it. There's less games coming out on the market. It tends to be older games. I mean, if you look at the top 10 outside of Monopoly Go, which is, a unique case, they're old games. Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, Candy Crush. I mean, how old is Candy Crush now? And it's still in the top 10. So I left Web2 exactly for the reason you said. It's like, I need something to fix the business model. I need to either find a way to reduce cost per install, incentives, or I need to find a ways to improve KPIs. And we know the moment you make a buck, doesn't need to be thousands of it, just a buck, you're going to play the game longer because you're like, once again, I'm having a good time and I'm getting a free coffee a week. And that's like sweet spot where hopefully this whole model makes sense, right? And to your point, if we manage to do that, on paper, it's very simple. You've said it, very simple. Cheap acquisition, good LTV. You're like, this is a multi-billion-dollar business right there. It's very easy on paper. In reality, it's very hard, but you're right. And so that's why I got into Web3. It's just like, I need to improve those two metrics. As simple as that.
Wow. Okay. Fascinating. That's why I love these conversations, man. It's crazy. To say that you're fighting a difficult battle, Jeremy, would be an understatement. Only a couple of months ago, you launched one of the most successful NFT campaigns of 2023 with Overworld. Today, you are launching Xterio. Just yesterday, XTER was trending on my Twitter. So far, would you say launching the NFT or the token was an easier experience?
I think that launching the NFT was much easier, and here's why. We got extremely lucky with Overworld when it came to timing, right? We were kind of like the first big new NFT right when the bull restarted, and attention was on ETH NFT at the time, right? And so we had prepared for a long time. We had great, assets, great story, beautiful NFT, Giancarlo Esposito doing voiceover. And so that was a pretty easy process because we had almost no competition, like almost none. Launching the token is much harder because we're like in full bull and everybody under the sun is launching their token, is trying to like maximize the opportunity. So suddenly we went from like no competition to tons of competition. And so trying to like rise above, right, is challenging. And that's why we're being so active this April with launch of the chain, launch of Palio, launch of Age of Dino, our social fight campaign starting Monday the 15th, and we're doing some novel stuff on there too. And there's like more coming, is because we need every data point we can, right? To say, hey, we're the number 4th chain in terms of transaction. We're number 1 trading in Singapore last week. And as you said, I didn't even know, but we're trending in the US. Like we need as many elements to show we're not like the 500 other competitors. We're much better. That's harder, but in a way, I'm also like less stressed out about it because we've grown the team. I've got a lot more people helping me that I'm sure you can relate. So that's much easier, and also the market is better, right?
Right.
Back in December, I was like, I don't know if we're even gonna mint out. I mean, I knew around toward the end, but in October, November, I was like, man, this does not look good. The market was really bad. So today, at least I know like, okay, I want to maximize the opportunity, but the chances of us fucking it up they're small, right?
Correct.
Like, I don't think we're going to be under a certain TVL or market cap in my mind. But of course, I want the market cap and TVL to be as high as they can be. So it's a different type of like stress.
What is one thing you wished you knew that you know now that you wished you knew 2 years ago when you first started building in Web3?
It's been such a journey, and a lot of people have commented as like you were, undereducated when you started, and now you're extremely educated. And I talked to a lot of other founders, and I have to at time like explain to them what is Web3, right? And the way I phrase it is like, there are two games in Web3. There is the game development game, which is often what Web2 founders focus on, right? They start the conversation, our game is so much better. It does all of this. And I have to tell them, nobody gives a fuck, straight up. And then there's the Web3 game. And you need to run those two games in parallel, right? That is very difficult. I think it's very difficult for Web3 native. It's very difficult for Web2 natives.
What is the Web3
because
game?
You need to. The Web3 game is the hype game. It's the attention game. It's the, being trending, like having narratives, keeping those narratives up, making sure that there's always like something, to look forward to. And it's very hard for both of the groups to do what the other group is doing. It's very hard for Web2 folks to be like, but I don't want to do the hype game. I want my product to speak for itself. And I'm like, then stay in Web2 because you're in like a different environment. And if you want to win in that environment, you need to change your mindset. And it's very hard for Web3 people because they play the hype game too much, but there's no business fundamentals. And at some point, business fundamentals do catch up with you, right? Yeah, you can have a successful mint, but if you're, we see it, right? I won't mention a couple of like, there's been a couple of listings recently, very high TVL, like crazy. They had extremely good social fi campaign, but you see the TVL just like declining very rapidly, right? It's like basically slashed in like half in, I don't know, a month or two, because there's nothing behind those businesses. You need to show, hey, our games are successful. They generate capital. They've got this many transactions. They've got, this many users. So you still need to have fantastic products. You may not need them the day you mint or the day you list, but you need to be ready for your products to showcase like, this is a real business. It's not just like a vaporware of crypto. And that's hard. So two games to play. It's very hard.
It is hard. So on that note, Jeremy, what is one recommendation, thought, point of inspiration that you have for some of the founders, some of the builders watching that aspire to become a Web3 founder like yourself?
Yeah, speak to the people that have walked the journey, right? I think I'm one of them. There's only a couple that I can think of. As I mentioned, it's hard for Web3 native chains to be able to understand a Web2 founder's motivation, especially a game maker. If we got into the gaming space, it's because we love making games. And you need to be able to tell those founders, here's how you're going to succeed. Yeah, you may need to remove a bit of your focus on the Web2 aspect for a while because you need to build your business around Web3 and then that value is going to translate back. But talk to founders that have walked the path, that have been successful and unsuccessful. Do not fall into the trap of only listening to, no disrespect, but only KOLs, right? And I often say, you have to remember, you as a founder, your motivations are also different. And so I know there's like, oh, they need a great advisor in Web3, but the advisor and the KOL they've got different motivations. And so talk to people that have similar motivations, can understand your background, who can trace a path for you. And I think that's why today, Xterio is the #1 launchpad in terms of ETH divided by project, right? We've been the most successful launchpad for any project to mint on. And it's also because we're able to talk one-on-one with the founder and say, hey, I totally hear what you're saying. I get it. I used to think the same way, but let me tell you where I think you're wrong, where you can improve. So yeah, just, partner with great people, especially really people that share your goals. It's like if you have a big brother, they fall to show you where the pothole is, right?
Yeah.
But we fail. We fail quite a lot. So
Jeremy, I appreciate you. Like you said, I like what you just said. So good, I had to write it down. Speak to the people who have walked the journey. And like you said, the Web3 space, we're cheering for you. And we're cheering for the success of XTER when you guys launch.
I appreciate it, my man.
Thank you, brother.
Cool. All right, take care. Bye-bye.